Okie dokie. Let's get the party started. You with me,
All
Scott?
right. I'm
Audio's
with you.
good.
Yeah, you can hear me okay?
Yeah, everything's good. All right, let me get this set up. Good. Okay. And I think this will be cool. I think people are keen to hear about the self-publishing route. There's a lot of people
Okay.
that want to be going down the same path that you're going down. And I think there's also a lot of people
Excellent.
that, um going the traditional route, but wanting to explore this as well. Okay, so is
Yeah, I
this?
mean, I changed my mind. Like I was always set on
Yeah.
going traditional, and it wasn't until I heard a lot about the self-pub that I actually changed my mind.
Right,
So hopefully I
right.
can do this for somebody.
Okay, cool. I think we are actually up and running. Oh, we are. We went we went live without even realizing it. Sorry, guys, if you were just listening to me and Scott ramble there. But we're
Ramble
joined
on.
by Nastasia, Jean, Susan. Cool, we've got lots of great folks joining us. Guys, let me know if you're
Yeah,
tuning into this for the first time. Are you new to the group? Have you ever been along to one of these talks or classes before? Drop us a comment in the chat section there and say hi to me and Scott. So I'm here with the wonderful Scott Palmer. Hi, Scott.
hey buddy, how's it going?
Good, good. Thank you for joining me like this. It's our first time talking together live like this. The reason
Yeah.
I wanted to, thanks. The reason why I wanted to bring Scott on, and some of you guys will have seen me announce and post about this before. Scott is doing rather well, and we'll get into that in just a moment, with taking his book down the self-published path, but he didn't always want to go that route. Actually, this is something that we'll get into in a moment, but he was originally someone that was really set on publishing traditionally. Now, we don't have a particular bias in our coaching, so we're happy to help people go either way. Sometimes we help people go the traditional route. Some of you guys watched the talk with Victoria the other day, then you've seen an example of that. And other times we help people self-publish. What I'm trying to do here in the group is talk to people that we have helped go different ways so that you guys get a balanced perspective of what's possible and what your options are. So today, hopefully, Scott, you can help people understand why you chose to self-publish this, right?
Yeah.
So if you guys are ready for us to get into that, then just drop us a comment in the chat and say ready. And then me and Scott are going to dive into talking a little bit about his story. And we will also give you some time at the end if you have any questions for me or for Scott as well, so that you can really get the most out of this. Now, Scott, the place where I want to start, because
Yes.
don't worry, we are going to get into the self-publishing talk, but I think
No
you
problem.
guys are only going to be able to understand why Scott has these results if you also understand the background context behind it. So I want to start with that. Scott, this is your first book, right?
My first book, yeah.
Yeah. When was like the genesis of this idea? How did you get into writing this?
Well, yeah, actually, so I say it's my first book, but it's the first book that I've published. It's the
Yeah.
first book I finished properly.
Okay, cool.
Before I came to you, I had written some stuff. I had written about 80,000 words of a book that went completely straight and never
Right.
started to come back around. So it
Right.
was just all out, no, like there was never going to be an ending to this. So I stopped, I cut that one off, started a new book. I wrote that one. I actually completed that book, but when I was reading it back, I was not happy with it. I thought, to put it bluntly,
Sure.
I thought that it sucked.
Right.
So
Okay.
I thought, okay, I want to write a book. Like if I'm going to put a book on a shelf, I want it to be something I'm really proud of. And that's when I sought you out. You were offering obviously a lot of help in just the gathering your tools that you may have had as a writer, but you didn't know how to organize them. Um, you
Yeah.
really helped me to just organize how to write a book. So I have to give you a lot of credit in that sense because before I had the kind of tools that I learned from your course, I
Yeah.
was unable to completely plan out a whole series.
Yes.
So I think part of the reason that this book has had some interest is because I'm presenting it as a series. I'm not presenting it as
Yeah.
one book.
Yeah.
So in order to plan that out and to do it, obviously a lot of the series planning came while drafting the first book.
Yeah.
Not to make it like this big daunting thing, you've got to plan an entire series before you get
Yeah.
started. But it was definitely as I was drafting the first book, I started to see things that arose that I could just kind of write down to use for other books. Learn how to
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
as you, the things that you were teaching, how to leave little breadcrumbs and different
Mhm.
things like that. But it really it wasn't conceived in one sitting. It really came and it started building and building the
Gradually,
further
the building
into it.
blocks are there. Yeah.
Mm.
And so I think that people will probably be able to relate to this. But when you were at that stage when we started working together, to go back into the story, your story, what, why did you seek out that help? Like, what were you struggling with at the time? Was it a lack of
Yeah, like
feedback, or what was it?
it was like well, feedback is obviously something very difficult to get for somebody starting off. So that was something I remember I won a little contest with you where you
Mm.
reviewed my first chapter.
Yeah, yeah.
And you reviewed my first chapter. I was like, I really like this. Like, I could use some more of this. So that
Right.
really was how I started. To be honest, it was like, yeah, I want some feedback on this. Like, how can this help me? And then obviously it was really I knew as I looked at what your course offered, I was just really excited because I had not thought about a lot of the character stuff and a lot of the plot stuff and a lot of the moral stuff that
Yeah,
you kind
yeah.
of offered. And I thought as I was the book that I had that I don't know if you remember, but I had a full book and I was like, should I work on this book with you or should I give you these first 3 chapters of this new book that I've got? And you were
Right.
like, well, Scott, the new book's way better. You
Okay.
seem more excited about it, so let's work on that from the beginning,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it was really just me
Yeah.
having to give up that full story and learn like just kind of from my own personal standards, realizing that what I had written wasn't quite cutting it character wise, plot
Right.
wise,
Right. 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 Right.
missing stuff, and I didn't know what it was missing.
If anyone here is wondering, how does this connect back to the self-publishing stuff that we're going to talk about? This is the stuff that you have to get right first, because you'll probably agree with this, Scott, but I think a lot of people jump the gun with self-publishing and they're like they'll publish a book that no one has ever looked at. It's never had any feedback, it's never had any editing. You
Yeah.
you really took your time with this. Like how long did it take you to get to the point where you felt like, okay, I've done this justice and I'm ready to release it now?
Yeah, okay, so it's been I hired you 3 years ago. three
Was it
years
that
this
long
June.
ago?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so from the start of this to the point where it's coming out tomorrow, it's been
yeah,
essentially 3 years. The
that's
book
awesome.
took about the first draft was done in 8 months.
Yeah.
So that tells you how much of after the first draft is done, there's still just an
A
immense amount
lot,
of
a
stuff.
lot to do, right? For
Really,
anyone like 3 years, for anyone that's panicking right now, that's long by our standards. Working
yeah,
together,
no, it
it's
is.
usually yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll admit
Yeah, we usually aim to try to get your stuff finished and to get it out within like a year or so. But I really appreciate that you took your time with it, Scott, and try to get it right because a lot of people here that are on the fence about the self-publishing thing.
yeah.
Has anyone here been unsure about self-publishing because you don't want to be perceived as your book being low quality? I'd love for you guys to comment for me in the chat so that we can get a sense of that. Because I think some people have some reticence because they feel like there are so many bad, low quality self-published books out there that they don't want their book to be perceived that way. But let's fast forward a bit in the story, because I mean, we can talk about what we do in the course and stuff like that, but I
Yeah.
think people are more interested to hear about your experiences. So suffice it to say, Scott worked with our team. We did get the book finished. We did get it to the point where you were ready to release it. What I want to ask is, when we started together, you said, Max, I want to get to the point where we could publish this traditionally. And at some point
Yes.
you pivoted. At some point you
I
pivoted.
big pivot.
Can
Yeah.
can you tell people the story of what made you pivot?
I would love to. Okay, so what happened is when I had that first draft finished, I had written that book to please agents. So if you're trying to get traditionally published, one of the biggest recommendations would to be look what agents are looking for in a book, and not try to write exactly that, but keep it in mind that there's a length that they're looking for. There's an
Yeah.
ideal length. There's an
Yeah.
ideal story structure. They want a completed book, like you say. So there are a lot of things to think about in the traditional route, right? That when I was done the first draft, I was so excited to carry on with the series. I wanted to write the second book. I wanted to edit this book. I wanted to make it the best I could. But with the traditional, if you were going to do a bunch of edits before finding an agent, your agent's going to make you edit the book. Your editor is going to make you edit the book once your agent finds you an editor. So I knew there was going to be a ton of changes that were going to be forced on me. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to do too much of an edit right now before I
Okay.
find an agent. Right?
Okay.
And during that, as I was doing that, I just got too excited, and I saw a friend, a mutual friend in the group in the self-publishing industry. You guys have all probably heard of him, Ryan Cahill, and he writes fantasy books and essentially the same genre that I'm in. And I remember when I first joined your course, I saw him in Facebook groups and just kind of doing the same thing I was doing, puttering around, trying to get people to notice you, trying to see. And I really didn't think too much of it. But fast forward 2 years when my book was ready to go, he
Yeah.
had just released his third book, and I saw him absolutely blow up. I saw him all over every Facebook group, every bit of social media. He was everywhere. His book was everywhere, and
Yeah.
he had already written three, and that was
Yeah.
in 2 years. And I realized, okay, I want to write this second book so bad. I want to carry on. I know what I want my series to look like. I know the
Yeah.
branding, all that. So rather than just wait and give that control to somebody else, why not
Yeah.
see if I can take the control of the branding, the story, and where it's going to go
Yeah.
myself? And it also made me really worried. I heard a lot of people get deals where in a series where you have one book and they might buy your first book, and that's a really exciting thing, but the first book flops, and then they don't
Right.
want your second, third one. So now
Right.
you've built a world and you've built these characters that I just they were too important to me to not give it everything.
Get it.
I knew that if this was gonna fail, I wanted it to be on me. I wanted it
Right.
to be my fault and not
Right.
somebody else's.
It's interesting.
And
So
I'm
that go
so
ahead.
I
Sorry.
just know the feeling of when I feel out of control, I get really bad anxiety, and
Right. Right.
didn't want to be in that perpetual feeling of out of control with my own story, you know?
Sure, sure. So what I'm hearing from you is that the thing that made you tilt towards the self-publishing was that you simply have more creative control over what you're putting out, right?
It really
So
comes.
that it sounds like that's what it comes down to. Basically, if you were to give the book over to a publisher, yes, they might assist with some of those things, but you'd feel like they might get you to make edits that you don't want to make. They might
Yeah,
brand it or market it in a way that you don't want them to. Um,
yeah,
maybe they even don't want you to do a second book or a third book in the way that you had planned to. And so it sounds
yeah,
like you like I would rather keep this in my own hands. I'd rather be at the steering wheel myself. I don't want to sell the rights to this to somebody else, which is more than fair. So
yeah.
for anyone that's on the fence, that's I guess one reason why you might want to consider going this route. I also really want to emphasize that self-published doesn't mean bad quality. I mean, can I show people your front cover, Scott? Is it launched yet?
Yeah, yeah. I've got the book right here. So one of the
Oh,
things is ignore the strip. So this is one of the things that is very important is like you said with low quality. You want to make so I've got a logo here that I created a logo. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. I created
yeah.
a logo, and I noticed that every book on the shelf has a
Yeah.
publishing logo in the bottom corner, right?
Yeah.
So if the book's on the shelf, I wanted to absolutely make it indistinguishable from
Oh,
traditional books in every way. So
oh.
we've got praise for a memory. You open the front cover, we've got praise. You've got nice cover page, nice maps in there.
That's
So it
awesome.
really was like I wanted to make the product as high quality as possible.
I get
So
that.
like I said, it looked good next to a traditionally published book. Because one of the things that I did learn,
Yeah.
Max, is when you are if you are wanting to market your own book, when you get out there and you get into the different social media platforms and you start seeing readers, you start engaging with readers. One thing that you'll notice is a vast majority of them don't really care who published it or where it came from. They just
Yeah.
want a good book. They want a good book that looks good, that has a good
Yeah.
premise that they would get lost in, and that's really what it's all about. There's obviously a huge audience that doesn't feel that way,
Yeah.
but that comes with anything, you know.
You know what's interesting is that I believe there are more people buying books online now than buying books in actual
Exactly.
bookshops. And if you're on Amazon, you actually can't tell what's been self-published or traditionally published. At a glance, there's no way to distinguish. Unfortunately, you can tell when the front cover or the interior is really low quality. You're like, okay,
It's not good.
self-published.
Yeah,
But for a book, honestly, Scott, for a book that looks like this, just to share the screen so that people can see the front cover. This is
yeah,
indistinguishable from something published traditionally. Like this is very, very good cover art and cover design. I mean, you guys can let us know what you think in the comments as well, but I think this is to an extremely high standard. And I actually have a funny story that a while back I saw that my I was visiting my mom and she was reading something, right? And I was like, "What's that?" I picked it up and I leafed through and I was like, "Oh, this is self-published." And she said, "What's that?" People don't, the
didn't
audience doesn't know, right?
They
People don't,
really don't.
they just want something high quality. And if you can put out something high quality, you can build an audience of people that love your stuff, you know?
And another caveat on that, if you have a high enough quality book, like I'll have my book in bookstores here in my local area. So you just get in touch with
Right.
the reps, buying reps. You show them your book, you pitch them your book. If it looks good enough, they'll be like, yeah, I'll order some copies. It looks great, especially being a local author. So it really is like when you really get into it, if you want to do the work on the marketing side, you can really make it indistinguishable in
Yeah.
more than one, in more than just the look of it, but in where you buy it as well. And
Yeah, and
like you said,
I also want to say that just for people to let that sink in for a second, yes, the book can also be in bookshops, like Scott just
100%.
mentioned. So
Yep.
if your goal is just to have something that looks good, it's high quality, people can pick it up in a bookshop or they can buy it online and they can read it and enjoy it. There's a lot to be said for taking this path, right?
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So I would also, does anyone have some questions for me or for Scott? Um, okay, there's actually some that were coming through already. Stephen was
Okay.
asking who did the artwork for the cover.
That's a great question. So this is one of the things, if you're looking at a cover, research, especially before you hit that button to buy, because you don't have to spend a lot of money. And I will make that very clear. Like the artist who did mine is Stuart Bache.
Okay.
He's worked on Stephen King covers for the UK, the mass market ones. But he also did, like I found him because he did Ryan Cahill's covers. So when I was looking at Ryan's book, why is his book doing so well? Why is it succeeding? I just looked in the books under the acknowledgments and I found his cover designer, right?
Right.
Um, I looked him up. I knew that these were very well received in the indie community. I also knew I wanted iconography, which iconography for anyone is like just a picture rather than, sorry, just an icon or a logo rather than a illustrated cover.
Yeah.
They're generally cheaper to do that route. Um, so, anyways, when I was researching this, it's not only just about finding a good cover artist who does high quality work. Finding a cover artist who works in your genre is very important.
Uh-huh.
But finding a cover artist who's aware of marketing. So one of the things that's really important, that if you want to take that cover, like you showed, it's just the digital version. It's just the front cover, right? So when you see yourself on lists on Amazon, or if you do any type of promotions, you're going to have the front of your cover, and it's going to be next in a list, next to all the books that are ranking, right? So if your book looks indistinguishable next to John Gwynn's or
Yeah.
any of the traditional, you have a front cover that just fits right in. And
Yeah.
that's what would be my best advice, was to look, not to just get a good cover designer, which is obviously very important, but to find the right cover.
Right.
So like if you want to research your genre, and then if mine was epic fantasy, so for the first thing I did, I went top 100 books in epic fantasy on Google for Amazon. So
Right.
it gave me a list of the top 100 books that were the highest selling. It gave me a picture of all of their covers. And I was able to look at those 100 or so books and kind of decide the route that I wanted to go. So when I hired my cover designer, who's extremely talented, I knew what to tell him. I said,
Yeah.
"Hey, here's what I want. Here's what I think is going to work. Can you make this better?" He's like, "Yes, this will work. I'll make it better. Here we go."
I
So
love
it's
that.
again, there's a few steps. I think in everything self-pub, there's always more than one step. It's
Yeah.
never just one
Yeah.
thing. It's multiple things coming together that you've just really got to consider. Even when it comes down to um, the font of the front cover, different genres use different fonts. And they're very, like, for instance, Epic Fantasy uses the font Cinzel, which is a Google font.
Right.
So if you can make your own cover if you understand the different nuances of the genre that you're writing in. But really, that's what it comes down to is
Interesting.
understanding your genre, your book, who you're going to sell to. You need to know your readers and who's buying it and what they want. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. There's
because
gonna be a
I think,
lot. There's gonna be a
yeah,
lot for people to take in. This is a very information-rich interview, so I recommend that everyone goes back and watches this again, just to let some
yeah.
of what Scott is saying actually sink in, because there's a real learning curve with this stuff as well. Elizabeth was also asking you about the maps in the interior. How did you get those? Was that also you hired an artist for those, or?
Yes, so I had my own map drawn on my wall with a poster board. I used like a Bristol board and I drew it, and that's what I used to write the book. And I designed the map in that way. But yes, I hired a professional cartographer to
Wow.
do it correctly and do it digitally.
Yeah.
And the maps were a whole thing to figure out formatting and how to get them
Yeah.
in the books looking good. They were a whole thing. But I've got these postcards now.
Oh,
So if
cool.
you order a book off me, you'll receive this in a nice letter, and then you can just write a personalized letter on the back. Um, but the
That's awesome.
map was always going to be part of the branding
Yeah.
of my world. For me, Middle Earth that's the brand. When you think Middle Earth, you think the map. And what I really blew my mind is when I was growing up, I had pictures of, say, Michael Jordan and Wayne Gretzky on my wall, but I also had a picture of a map. I didn't
Right.
have Bilbo, I didn't have Gandalf. I had a map, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that
Yeah.
was really a big thing for just my story. I knew it was the world is a big part of the story. So to present that in a really nice, organized way, that was always going to be the thing. And I had troubles getting in. I openly had troubles getting these into the books to look nice. I had to figure out multiple different programs and spent way too much money on buying these programs to get that map looking good. But it
Good.
was
Yeah.
really important to have that. Um, and
No.
I think if you're going to go that route, I think it comes back to knowing your brand.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be self-published author, I knew I had an idea. I wanted this brand. It has a map. It's got cool covers. It's epic fantasy, and
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
could just give a couple little things for people to latch on to, I think it really helps, just kind of promote, give you a platform, give you some people that are gonna be there for you.
I want to pick up on this because if anyone's been listening carefully to Scott, you'll notice that although it's called self-publishing, a lot of it wasn't done by Scott, right? So that's
Yeah.
it's a slightly
Entire team.
misleading Monica, but yeah, but you have to understand that like if you don't have you don't have a publishing house. And that the
Yeah.
publishing house are usually the people that would design a front cover and do the interior formatting. You are gonna have to get freelancers that have those skills to do those things with you. If you
Yeah.
notice, and we'll talk about some of your results in a second, but if you can see how on the ball Scott is with this and how well the book is already doing before it's out, even, that's because you've taken the time and you've saved up the funds and you've worked with people like us or with like great cover designers and you've taken the time to really you've put the time and the energy and the money into it and it shows. I guess that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. You've
And
taken the
Max,
time to get quality there, you know?
that
And I
is,
think,
and the money thing, because I do want to say, like, it's a lot of people think it's a pay to play thing, right?
yeah,
But part of the reason it took me so long is because I did have to save up the money for these things. I didn't
right.
have it. I just made the decision to put it off so I could make the quality higher. Instead of
Right.
rush it out and get that book out with a cheaper cover and a cheaper map, I made a decision to save up and take that time and make sure that I could put it out. And that's not obviously going to be the route that everyone wants to take.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to what you want out of your writing. And I think this was a very
Yeah.
important thing early on in my career as just a writer.
Yeah.
Um, I knew that I wanted to do this as a career one day, and
Yeah.
that takes a certain level of commitment compared to if you just want to write a book. And I totally respect anyone who's just wanting to write a book. It is the most amazing, fun, incredible achievement. And if you just want to write one book and do it, I celebrate you to the max because that is the most amazing thing. And if you just want to do one, that's amazing and that's great. And you've got this thing now. For me, I always knew I was going to do more than one. I was going to do this forever. Um,
Okay.
so it was just kind of, what do I want to set the precedent as? What do I want to make it? And if that meant making it longer between releases, I
Yeah.
was okay with that because, again, it comes back to, as a self-published author, you want to know your brand, you want to know what you're presenting to people. And
Mhm.
again, I want to say it again because it really is important, but you want to know your readers.
Yeah.
It's really important to try to get out there and find different social groups. Like, for instance, your group is great, but just find different social groups based around the genre that you're writing in. We're a bunch of writers that are all writing different stuff, and that's great, right? But finding people who are writing in the same genre as you or reading the genre you're writing in will really plug you into a community, and
Yeah.
community is everything.
Yeah, we were just talking about this prior to the call, actually, that you kind of have to start, especially if you want to do this for a career. And for the
Yeah,
people who aren't interested in that, you can just kind of ignore what me and Scott are saying here. But if that really is your goal at some point, you do have to start to think about things like marketing, and you start to have to think about the book as a product. And you start to have to think about how can I actually build a bit of a fan base or a customer base
yeah,
around my books so that I can turn this into an income stream at some point. And
That's
that
awesome.
takes time and it's a challenge, but
Yeah.
we can probably
It's
talk more about that on a different call. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to not to know you don't want to trick people into reading your book. That's not what we're trying to do.
Oh, sure.
You don't want to, you're not trying to just get a quick sale. You want to find people
Yeah.
who the books can connect with, who are going to recommend it to people, and it's really a thing. Like,
Well, I want to say it's the same with the group that we're running here. We're trying to nurture like a good long-term relationship with people
yeah,
like you, whose books we're
yeah,
actually working on, and people in the group who watch these classes who aren't working with us yet, right?
yeah.
It's a stupid mentality to try to just get a quick sale and then not deliver great results because you're not going to have a good reputation to start off with.
Yeah.
And
No,
then
no,
also, obviously, you're not going to nurture those relationships that should last for a lifetime. So
that's right.
I agree with you that at the end of the day, it's all about quality, and quality is what creates fans, you know. So I think all of that's really relevant.
Quality
Um,
and a bit of confidence. And it can be feigned confidence. If you're not super confident in yourself, you don't have to be, you have to at least try to pretend to be.
right.
Because if you're not confident in your book, somebody's not going to really want to. If you're like, I wrote it, it's all right, like
Yeah.
you're not doing a great job of getting it out. But I
No,
do want to say too, I have friends that I made in your class that I still talk to, so it's
oh
really
yeah.
cool. It's good. Like when you talk about community, I would
Yeah.
encourage anybody to try to make some connections and talk to people and then get to know the other writers, get
Yeah.
to know readers, and just get to know people because community is really the best thing. And that is what if you want to say keeping your finger on the pulse. You want to know what's kind of going on. If you want to be a writer, what are people writing? I mean, you don't want to necessarily write to what's marketable at the time, but I just mean like it's important to kind of know where things are going, what the trends are, pick up
Sure.
on what are people saying about AI today.
Right, right. I'm not even gonna open that can of worms because that'll take up the rest of the interview.
That's
But you had a lot of questions, so I'm gonna pick and
right. Okay.
choose from these, and I'm just gonna choose the ones that I think people would find most helpful. Give me just a second to look at some of what you guys asked. So, all right,
Just
cool.
sitting like
Um, Addison asks how much time you devoted to uh preparing to publish this, um, putting together marketing materials, doing the actual marketing. How do you like balance that with your job, and how much time has that been taking you?
Yeah, so that is a balance is the hardest part, and I think that's something that I actually learned from Max's course. To give him credit, accountability is very important. Knowing
Mhm.
you're like I have a full-time job and a family, so it is hard to fit it in. Um, but knowing, I guess, okay. So to answer the question, I started 9 months before yesterday. Like I get a 9 month marketing plan where I could get on all the social medias, try to build a fan base and get to know everybody. I did in that 9 months. I did cover reveal, blurb reveal. You just keep releasing more of your book and trying to gather people.
Yeah.
So like I said, a 9 month kind of build up to getting to this point. Um,
Oh,
and
okay.
during those 9 months, I was studying self-publishing. I was studying all the marketing stuff. I was studying how to Amazon, Ingram Spark, all the different platforms, how to sell. You need a website, you need a mailing list, all things. So it takes some time, and I would encourage to give yourself at least 7 to 9 months to learn that stuff. There's tons of resources online to learn all of this. It's all free. Um, it might be hard to cipher through. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, like anything. But I would just encourage to take that time to research how are you going to build a fan base. The best thing, the big three, and this will be on every bit of advice, is website, mailing list, social media. And
Right.
if you get those three things established, that's where you're going to get all of your readers and make all of your connections.
Awesome.
And whatever social media you choose from talking with different authors, everyone works. If you want to use Threads or Twitter, it doesn't matter because both of them work. Whatever you're most comfortable with, I would recommend not trying to do every one of them because you do have to kind of focus. You got to be consistent, like anything with the marketing and with the writing, they're the same thing. You have to write every day, you have to market every day. And
Yeah.
marketing doesn't necessarily mean putting money into ads. Marketing is what we're doing right now, putting your face in front of people,
Yeah.
is giving information, letting people know your thoughts. So if you're on social media, comment on things, comment on big books, just leave your thoughts, let people know what's inside of your head. Um, and you get the mailing list going, and then people are going to actually sign up to hear what you have to say, which is really strange. But they do, and it really comes back to putting yourself out there and get comfortable with that, and take the time to establish relationships with people. And you don't just want to, if somebody, like for me, if somebody's leaving a review, I'm reaching out to that reviewer and saying thank you personally. I'm not just going to leave a like or a heart on it. Like, I want to say, hey, like, I want to actually try to make a connection with people.
Connecting with
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, guys, people are probably gonna want to watch this twice. I would
Yeah.
say
I'm sorry. I get on rants sometimes, so I
no,
do
it's cool, it's
apologize.
cool, it's cool. Go
As
back
long as I
and
answer the question, I hope I answered the question.
yeah, it does answer the question, so that's perfect. For anyone that's interested, definitely go back and you can listen to some of what Scott is saying again, and I'm sure you can send him a message as well if you're curious to hear about some of this stuff. There's some technical questions here, but I think you can leave those for another time.
Yeah,
But
honestly, anybody, if you have a question, please message me personally. If you want to reach out on Instagram or Facebook, send me a personal message. I'd be happy to talk to any of you and answer some questions.
awesome. That's very generous of you. So Scott, am I right in understanding that this comes out tomorrow and it was at number 8 in its genre on Amazon?
Yeah, well, so you pick, so you've got different genres in Amazon. So you've got the overarching fantasy genre, and then there's subcategories. So I was ranking 8 in Arthurian fantasy, which is a subcategory of fantasy. And that was before, like, I don't even get into the technical issues, but I had some technical problems, which had my book removed from Amazon for
We
14.
can skip over that because we're not going to have time to unpack it.
Exactly.
In a couple
So
of minutes.
to skip over that, it was, once you start getting pre-orders with Amazon, they'll actually count the order for that day they do. So you can actually start trending before the book's released. So it holds a little bit of your trending each day.
I want to
And yeah,
say trending number 8 in Arthurian fantasy when the book isn't even out yet is insane. That's
I was
insane.
pretty happy. Big accomplishment. I mean, it's really weird because I really want to make sure that I'm staying. I never want to feel braggy, and I don't want to feel like when I'm getting
Uh,
these wins that I'm bragging, because I'm really not. I'm just
you
excited,
know
and
what it
I
is? But it's not even. That's exactly what I was going to say. This is inspiring for people to
yeah,
see that you can actually do something like that as a first-time author. And man, God
yeah,
knows where the book is going to go once it's actually out, because that was just the
I know.
preview.
And
So that's
and we had the technical problems, and because I had made some connections online, and I'm seeing the pre-orders pour in today, which is just really crazy, humbling. I can't even believe it. It's the
so cool.
greatest feeling.
That's so
Because
cool.
it's and again, it all comes back to establishing relationships and
Yeah.
making sure you're connecting with people.
Yeah. So, guys, we are just about out of time. So, I'm going to wrap this up with Scott now. Um, Scott, that was amazing. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Yeah, I could
And
talk forever.
yeah, people here are going to want the book link. What I'm going to do, guys, I will make another post tomorrow. And when you get the recording, I will drop everyone the recording along with a link to the book so that you can also check it out and pick it up as well. For anyone that's actually interested in following Scott in Scott's footsteps, right? Like Scott mentioned, we did work together privately. We're more than happy to do that with anybody in this group as well, as long as you're a good fit and as long as you do want the support. You can take a look at the link that I just dropped there in the comments that's just pinned. If you're interested, you can go ahead, you can fill out that application. Takes like, I think about 30 seconds to a minute, something like that. And that will allow us to get in touch and to see if we can help you in the same way that we helped Scott. That might not be for everybody. If you're not at a stage where you want the more in-depth help like that, that's totally fine. But if you're at a point where you feel like, I want to start taking this more seriously and I want to get some amazing results in this area and I want to learn all the skills and the knowledge to be able to do something like what Scott has done, definitely click on that link that's there in the comments. And I would love to hear from you very soon. Scott, thanks so much.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Max.
I'll wrap this up. Guys, see you all
Okay.
soon. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.